All right, guys, today joining me are two very, very talented music composers and also YouTubers, and they are actually partners on the Make Music Income podcast. This is Eric Copeland and Steve Beddall. And I wanted to have them join me because, as you guys know, I put up a video recently about the Pond5 situation. And this is something that I did not anticipate happening this quickly. So last week on Friday, I put together this little video about how I thought there could be a play for us to start licensing our music to AI models in the future. Lo and behold, Eric emails me literally like almost that day saying, hey, this is kind of already happening. So this stuff is happening faster than even I anticipated. So I wanted to bring these two gentlemen on to the channel so they could talk about their experience with this. They basically woke up to this news last week. And I think there are pros and cons to this new source of income. So basically what happened, as just a real quick summary, Pond5 is now offering a new source of revenue for all of its contributors that is basically going to be licensing its content to AI models and companies that have AI models that need to use content to train on to basically understand how is this music composed and what sounds are being used and all these kinds of things. There's a lot of sort of unclarity or uncertainty about what's being trained and what's being used. So we'll talk about that in this conversation. But I really wanted to bring these guys on so we could just talk about this, get their perspective on it and how they really feel about this. So Eric, let's start with you, man. How did you feel waking up getting the news that you got a new source of income with Pond5?
I tell you, man, this is the week that AI got real, starting with we woke up Monday to Jesse's channel saying that it was going to change and focus more on AI. And we were all like, whoa, I mean, you're like the OG in all of this space, dude. We all are like, okay, we just want to be like Jesse. We've been following you for years and listening to your advice. And so when you carefully were considering changing your channel, we had to we were all like, a little like, wow, if Jesse is really focused on this, maybe we need to take a look at this. And, but then it got crazier because on Wednesday, we all woke up to new money in our Pond5 accounts on Wednesday. And I had $60. Other people were making hundreds of dollars in this data sets new thing. And it suddenly got super real. It wasn't just a far off possibility of something happening with this. It was happening right now in Pond5, which is not a huge paying library for either Steve or I, but it is a place where we have a bunch of music. And when you get $60, $100, a couple $100, that's something, right? And so we were literally inside the beginning of AI learning. That's what they're using this for. And we had to make decisions if we wanted our music to be used that way. You know? How
about you, Steve? How'd you feel?
Yeah, well, I didn't know about any of this until Eric texted me and let me know about it too. First of all, I'm not very active on Pond5. I don't have a lot of stuff there. I think I made like $15 from this thing. And to me personally, it really comes as no surprise that Pond5 is kind of in the process of training AI models on their catalog. And I mean, the way I felt about it is that I sort of felt like the automatic opt-in like kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, to be honest. And I think, you know, I sort of was wondering like, where was the heads up on that? And I was trying to remember if there was some kind of small print along the way somewhere, like maybe in the agreement when we opted in for like the subscription revenue share or when they were acquired by Shutterstock. I don't know if people know that, but they're owned by Shutterstock. I think, you know, regardless, I don't know if I mind too much about the fact that, like, you know, my music is being trained for AI models. I think it's just interesting. And I think that if I could make any sort of like short-term prediction, I would bet on new generative like AI music sites like SoundRaw, for example, becoming like a really increasingly in the years to come, becoming a really attractive low cost option for content creators, like, you know, YouTubers and stuff, as they become more sophisticated over time. And you can bet that Shutterstock is desperately trying to catch up. And, you know, this is a big company with a lot of money behind it. So, you know, everyone's trying to compete and play the AI game. So I think that's where we're at right now.
I think you're absolutely right on that. It's the Wild West, and nobody really knows what to do about it. So everybody's just scrambling it. But I think we all, if we haven't figured it out yet, we all know that everything's getting disrupted. And I think that's the sort of kind of panic feeling in the room. And all these companies are trying to figure out. And I think definitely the sort of stock music, royalty-free sites are certainly see that pressure. They're feeling that pressure probably early on in this process. Because of companies like you said, SoundRaw and others that are certainly going to be able to creep into the space and have AI generated music essentially be a competitor to human created music, right? Let's talk about that sort of the agreement. My initial look through the Pond5 and Shutterstock agreement, they are claiming that they are allowed to do this without having to notify you and to ask your permission, because there's one thing in the agreement that states that they can sort of, I think it was something like look for new technologies or new businesses or new markets essentially to monetize your music. Now, I do believe you guys can take your music out at any point, so there's no sort of an exclusive tie where you're kind of locked in with them. Maybe you guys can help me understand, like, is there a process to take your music out, or is it just literally deleting your tracks off their website? But it is interesting that they do offer the opt out, and they tell you guys you can do that, as opposed to just coming to you all and saying, here's a new source of income. Do you want a piece of this? Do you want to opt in? Because I think the big trouble that a lot of the AI, sort of the Mid-Journey and DALL-E companies are sort of facing right now is that exact point, that they didn't go to every single photographer and visual artist in the world and say, hey, we want to start using your great photography and art to train our AI models. So because they didn't have that opt-in model, there's now tons of legal cases, class action lawsuits going through the courts to try to figure out, was that an infringement upon all these artists' rights? So Eric, what's your take on all that in terms of just the legal issues here, in terms of Pond5 and Shutterstock doing this?
I went back and looked today, and they did send out a new updated terms of policy and privacy email on March 3rd. And in it, it said that you could change your preferences. Now, I don't know where I have this, but April, they just recently said something about that they put the opt-in thing in April. But one of those preferences now is the way that you can just go in and simply click the dot to opt out of data sets. But you are opted in from the beginning. It's a little sneaky to opt us in from the beginning and then say, oh, but you can opt out anytime you want, but we've already opted you in. So most people who don't pay attention to their emails or don't pay attention to that this is going on, there's probably a lot of people who, like Steve, who barely ever checks his Pond5. He probably not even would know that this happened or know that he was even opted into this. And so, like, even with the privacy mumbo jumbo that they send out so there's likely most people can't see that. It's likely spelled out in legal terms somehow that they can do all this, or they can do whatever they want, and you're just letting them do this. Like every privacy policy, Google notwithstanding, and all of these privacy policies, they operate this way, and we usually just don't even pay attention to it. So yeah, we can opt out if we want to, but that we were opted in to begin with, and there are going to be people who are more angry about this than others, I think.
Let's talk about what these models are doing, because this is the one part you were saying something kind of sort of a little bit of a sneaky move there to sort of automatically opt everybody in and make you work to opt out. This is basically coming directly from the one sheet that was sent out to all Pond5 composers, because they were talking about how these AI models are using something called computer vision to study all this content, and that's what they're sort of helping share the revenue with you. But this is how they describe computer vision. Let me see if you guys can make sense out of this, because I certainly can't. Computer vision is a scientific discipline that seeks to develop techniques to help computers see and understand the context of digital images such as photographs and videos. And I'm thinking that also includes music now. A model is an engine that governs the behavior of the computer vision system. Researchers train machine learning models to identify visual objects within imagery and to improve a computer-assisted labeling techniques. So what that didn't tell me, though, was, is your AI model studying my chords, my melodies, my lyrics, my structure of my music? Is your AI model taking my actual sound recording and doing something with that on the back end? Or is it only taking the sort of underlying compositional, conceptual information from it? This does not answer any questions for me, and it definitely doesn't even address music at all. So to me, there's a huge question mark in terms of when these AI models come and start studying our music with computer vision, what the hell are they doing, right? Because are you just learning how to get better at creating your own music, or are you actually taking some part of our copyrighted content and you're going to regurgitate that later in your own unique way, kind of like how the DALL-E and Midjourney models have been doing? That to me is a clear copyright problem that they could get in some big trouble. And the fact that the way that they described this was very vague is kind of problematic for me, at least. Steve, let's start with you. What do you think about that?
Oh, there's so much to digest there. I would imagine that they're feeding everything to the AI models to study all of it, not only to get to a place where they're able to create like a generative model for music, but for doing things like auto tagging and writing descriptions and metadata and all that kind of thing too. It's the legal ramifications of all of it are really fascinating, and I'm so curious to see how it all plays out in the music space. Like you said, there's already like a lot of lawsuits brewing up, and I imagine that Shutterstock has a team of lawyers that are signing off on all this, but AI is really going to kind of force us to rethink notions of like ownership and attribution, and in the traditional like music industry sense, like the idea of authorship is going to be completely rethought, and it's really difficult to say how things are going to pan out with respect to that, because there's a lot of big corporate money that backs music and like more higher profile artists, and there's certainly going to be a backlash if AI is just pumping out content in the likeness of some of these, more well-known artists. I mean, so we'll see how that goes. But I mean, I think that there's the legal, it's like a legal minefield, and who knows? It's just so hard to say.
And I think
very much so. How about you, Eric?
I think some people are just not going to want their music used for data learning. They're going to think that it's being stolen or manipulated in a way they don't want it to be manipulated. Now, personally, though, I think this is less of a thing than we think it is when we deal with this kind of thing all day long, when we allow our music to be used in any way libraries and or clients getting music from libraries want to use it. We may not want it used in a racy scene. We may not want it used in another way. Now, we can't control that because we've signed a document with whatever library we're with that they can do anything they want with it. So to me, this is very similar to that. Kind of. Again, you're going to have to decide if you want to opt in or opt out of this kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because when you are sort of handing your tracks off to an entity and you're giving them all that permission and all that space to monetize it any way they can, then we do have to sort of let go of that feeling of control. And I guess the question will be with all of this is, because the video that I released about the new sources of income, what I had envisioned, and I think what would make you guys probably feel a lot more comfortable about this, is if Pond5 came to you and said, hey, got a new source of revenue for you. These AI models are going to train on your music. They might start generating new music using what they've learned from your music. But the cool thing is that we're going to start tracking all that. So if they sort of took all of Eric's tracks, let's say, and spit out, 1% of music that sort of used either your sound recording information or your chords and melodies and all that kind of stuff. If they used any content essentially that you had the copyright for, you're going to get entitled up to a piece of any of that income that gets generated from that company. So I envision a world where it's a win-win-win scenario, right? So you have the composer, you guys and myself, we would get a sort of cut of the back end. The actual AI company who created the algorithm and the technology, certainly they should be getting a cut because they created this amazing, powerful technology. And then, of course, whoever wants to come and click on the buttons and create new music and use it for whatever, they're going to get some really easily created music that they couldn't have had otherwise. So everybody in this scenario wins. But of course, that requires transparency. We kind of need to know and see under the hood about like what's being done with these models, how are they generating music, and also I want to know how much of my music actually was used. How much, there's a lot of these companies now that are putting up like loop-based AI models, where essentially it's not really like a computer trained from scratch creating music. It's basically like pulling together different loops that can change keys, to change tempos, stretch, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that could be easily tracked in terms of like how many of your tracks or your loops, Steve, combined with Eric's and then mine on top, what percentage was used. And this user clicked print, bounce, wanted to start using that. They're monetizing that. So we should be able to get compensated for something like that. So, but I didn't see that with this move with Pond5. And that's what I really want to start to push in terms of hoping we can try to create something like that where composers and producers feel valued in this scenario, because it's exciting. It's obviously an opportunity. But if we're basically taking, a couple of bucks here and there in the short run to just have these AI models replace us and just basically train on us and basically become, more proficient than we are, that doesn't feel good to me. That's just where I'm at with that. So I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
It's kind of a shrewd move to deposit money into people's accounts and then say, "Oh, by the way, we're now letting your music be used by AI, and look what you're getting for it. Don't you want to do this?" But I think I have to see this as a benefit. You talked about that in a video that you just made. Like, hey, we're all after my channel is called Make Music Income. Our podcast is called Make Music Income Podcast. We want to make music income. And if there is a way to credit creators for any who are getting their stuff sampled or collected and then reused, and then we're getting paid the same way we would if someone downloaded our song, or how is this different than, like I said before, any use of music? How different is it from getting a beat downloaded from BeatStars and then rapping over it and putting it out and it having its own another life with whoever artist? You can't control that. You can't control who uses your beat. And it's how different is it than 13 seconds of a song getting used by a TV show in Germany that is using it for whatever they use it for and turning that into something new. And so I don't think we always know, like I said, what our music's going to be used up for, and we don't know how it's going to be chopped up and how it's going to be reused with AI. But if we get paid for that use, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we do this for, to make music income? Especially, when we're talking about these libraries having really slowed down anyway, like a Pond5 has slowed down to a crawl, Audio Jungle has slowed down to a crawl for most of us. And so another income source is good. Isn't that what we want?
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, well, I think I like what you outlined there is an ideal scenario where, like Jesse, as a win-win-win, and I would love for that to be the case moving forward. I don't feel very optimistic about that, if I'm being totally honest. I think that there's a lot of I think even I read up a little bit about SoundRaw. Actually, speaking about them again, is they're actually have an in-house stable of producers, and they're training their AI on that content specifically. So they're not and they're, the way that they kind of talk about it is that's like a more ethical approach, because they're not just taking other data sets out there and training their AI on it without asking for permission, right? Which is an interesting move. And I think that ultimately, that corporate interests aren't going to want to, pay out royalties to, for using your music if they don't have to. And I think that it should be, in theory, easy enough to train AI on music without having, to pay out those dividends, I guess. Right. So, I mean, yeah, I think that if we're being honest, there, in terms of the stock music space, there's some low hanging fruit, with Pond5 and Audio Jungle. And like Eric said, there's been this huge drop off with sales there in the last 2 years. I mean, it's kind of crawled to pretty much, they're pretty much dead. It's very hard to make money there. And these are like hyper saturated sites to start with. And I think that, in terms of AI, like, I think you can think about maybe like the easiest track you've ever created, there's a lot of stuff on Pond5, which is kind of like, let's just say typically very minimalist, like 5 elements, like drums, bass, guitar, piano, or like a little melody or something like that. If you could put something like that together with a few sample libraries in like the space of like 20 minutes, you can be sure that AI is coming for that, very quickly. In terms of the level of complexity and sophistication that's that's many levels above that in quality, when AI is going to get to that point is anyone's best guess, really. But I think that there's still quite a bit of time. In terms of just the kind of dinky stock tracks, I think that's just around the corner.
Let me just
Very
add
true.
real
Yeah.
quick.
And I like, yeah, go ahead.
Let me just add real quick to what Steve was saying there. We have to remember who the client is on those stock sites. Because I am a client on stock sites, but I get stock video from them to make videos and stock photos and stuff. I don't have time to be watching 1,000 videos. I don't have time to be watching 10 videos. The first one I see, I pick, because I need to move with speed, because I need to knock these videos out for clients or whatever. But if we have a program that lets us whip something up in 10 seconds, we're going to use it as clients because we don't care. The people who come use stock music, now I'm not talking about sync licensing music. Maybe that is a little bit more of a quality thing that music supervisors are looking for or something. But for stock people who are going to stock libraries to find stock pieces of music to throw in their video because they got to get this thing edited. They hate editing as much as you do, as much as I do. They need it quick. They need it done. If a site comes up, says, hey, you can put a few keywords in and get the song you're looking for, they might do that if that means they don't have to sit there and listen to endless songs to find the one they want. So it's going to be about speed, and it's going to be about convenience to the client who is looking for these stock things, I think.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because that's going to be a video I'm going to put together soon, because this is a big sort of, it's going to be a challenge essentially that we have to, not necessarily a challenge, I guess I should say, it's going to be a big race that'll be between AI created music with an interface and AI aided search tools to find human created content. So we right now we're kind of only thinking about, well, these AI machines might sort of replace us or compete with us, blah, blah, blah. But there's also companies out there that are creating AI search tools that can make it even faster to find what you need from all this, already, huge catalogs of human created content. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely sort of this race between, and just like you said, when there's going to be a video editor, let's say like a TV show editor, and they're sitting there, it's just a matter of what's easier, right? If the AI thing is easy, because it's like, give me this kind of track, and it's like, boop, here you go. If it's that easy, they might do that. If the AI search tool, which already has all this content ready to go, is easier, they'll go with that one. So I really do think you're right. It comes down to efficiency, like which one of these approaches will actually be more efficient. Because even if the AI model is easy to talk to and it spits out music quickly, how accurate does it get the mark, right? Like how accurate is that piece of music to what the actual editor wanted? That'll be another thing. We'll have to kind of see how that plays out. So I kind of see both of these approaches kind of moving forward in our industry, and we'll see which one plays out. Let's go ahead and wrap up this conversation. I want to just get your guys' overall just thoughts and opinions and views on AI entering music in general, maybe AI in general. Does any of this stuff sort of scare you? Does it excite you? Are you optimistic, pessimistic, a little mix of both? Does this change any of your perspective on your future career as a music maker? Eric, why don't we start with you?
Yes, maybe, but only from a new possible income source. I think this goes back to something we talk about all the time when we talk about letting your music go, and that is how precious you are with your music. We deal with this all the time. If you're so precious that you don't want anybody altering your music anyway because it is your baby, it is your God-given art form that you were put on this earth to do, which I think, and I'm sure a lot of composers and artists feel like, then maybe this income stream is not for you. If you're too artistic and too attached to your music to say, oh, I never want anybody messing with this, then that's maybe this is not something you need to do. If you're not willing to make any concessions about your music for licensing or for Spotify, really, or for advertisers, or there's those of us who don't want to serve clients because clients tell us the way to make our music. We don't want to do it the way they want to, so we just don't do that work. We just make art. But I'm a firm believer in multiple music incomes. Obviously, that's what I preach on my channel, and that's what I preach to my clients. That's what I preach to students. And I think this is just another possible income stream. Like Steve says, it has to be regulated well, or it could all be stuff going under the rug. And like you said, copyright issues abound in all of this. But I'm going to get money tomorrow on the 15th. because of this data set earnings thing that came from this thing. I can't argue with that. This isn't a fantasy. This isn't a possible income stream down the road because of AI. This is now. This is today. This is this week, and it's going to pay for a dinner or something, or two. And so I have to say, I'm all for it right now. I've thought a lot about this since your first video on Monday of last week when you started this whole thing. We've been talking about it. We've been talking about it in our Discord. I've been talking about it with clients and in masterminds, and everybody has a thought about it. But I don't think it's going to change my world fundamentally from being a composer. I'm always going to be a composer. It's not going to change my world from being an educator. It's just going to give me more to talk about. It's going to put a little bit more money in my pocket and just a new technology to add to the list of income sources from what I do. So that's how I see it.
Right on. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, overall, I feel pretty optimistic and excited about the technology. I'm really curious to see how it gets adopted in like digital audio workstations. I'm excited about the prospect of like text to sample, creation. Like those things are really exciting as a music producer and a composer. And I definitely don't. Fear it. I think my anxiety about it is more centered around like the kind of ramifications for the world at large, just because the technology is moving so fast and there doesn't really feel like there's any guardrails up. And I think that we're going to get into some weird things happening in the next 5 to 10 years for sure. And I think that the legal system will probably have to play catch up and as we all know, things move very slowly, and in terms of the legal system, and I think that, we're just going to get into strange territory there. But in my heart, I believe that within my own lifetime, there's always going to be a big appetite for human created art and human connection, and I think that for artists, it's a really exciting time. And I think artists who are able to adopt AI into their creative stack really stand to benefit in the years ahead. And I, for one, I'm totally on board with it. Like I foresee an explosion of creativity and all sorts of new things happening. And I think that we have to think of ourselves as artists in the music licensing space. And I've been kind of preaching this for years now on my own channel and to the people who follow me on YouTube. And I think that the kind of anonymous stock or sync music composer should feel the need to evolve in the present day landscape to embrace some degree of social visibility and branding. And I think that that's the best way forward. I think that Artlist was way ahead of the curve in terms of that, just in terms of having like a sort of a human presence in everything. And I think that AI is just really a reminder that we need to embrace that kind of like artistic or that social presence in a way to succeed moving forward. So.
Great points. Yeah, I would agree. I think AI is basically exposing us to what humanity really is.
Yes,
and also what I'm already finding is I'm just appreciating other humans way more now all of a sudden, because you realize how precious it is to have just regular human contact interactions, because very soon in the future, we're going to be talking to a lot of AI robots that won't have a soul behind them. And we'll start to realize like they might be very helpful for many things in our life, but you'll realize like, it's not quite the real thing. The real thing has something to it that just feels a little bit more authentic. So I think that'll be one of the beautiful parts about this is we kind of maybe, hopefully, I hope, we cherish each other even more. That would be kind of a cool sort of side effect to all this. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts. And what I want to start doing, especially on my channel and with what I'm doing, is I want this to be a very honest conversation. So Steve, I do appreciate you talking about your concerns about, sort of what some of these companies may or may not do with our music in the future. And I want to make sure that we sort of keep that conversation going where we're not just sort of all aboard the AI bandwagon, all aboard the train, it's all good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like, no, there can be some big challenges, some big problems, some big no's. There should be some points in here where we go like, I don't know about that. That use of this technology might be very disruptive and, or maybe not disruptive, but very damaging to something that we really all treasure and value. So I want to make sure that I am also staying honest about that kind of stuff, because I don't want to be putting my blinders on, my optimism blinders on. So I really appreciate you guys just being honest about where you are with this. And I think we can just continue this conversation moving forward and see where this awesome new landscape is going to take us into the future. So Eric, let us know if people want to learn more about you and what you got going on the web. Where can they find you?
Just go to makemusicincome.com for the website, or just go to youtube.com/makemusicincome, and you can see everything I've got going there.
And Steve, how about you? What you got going on the web?
Yeah, find me at on YouTube at Stevie B Production Music Academy, or you can just check out productionmusicacademy.com.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Everybody else, please subscribe to this channel. If you're not subscribed yet, we're going to put out a lot of new content coming soon on not only what I see happening with AI in the music creation space, in the sync licensing space, but also some new tutorials that I'm going to be releasing about how to start using ChatGPT today to start making yourself a better and more educated and better prepared music producer. So you can use this new technology today to be miles ahead of the people that are not using it. So definitely make sure you don't miss out on those videos coming soon right here on the channel.